Okay, I think now it is on recording. So let me just share my screen. Okay. Not sure where it gone. Fine. So the course used to be called visualization, and it was a part of RDBMS SQL, and then we realized that there is actually a lot of material in RDBMS SQL, and if we just take some part time from RDBMS SQL, then it will be injustice to the RDBMS SQL. So we thought of okay, uh, let's do the RDBMS SQL full 2 credit course. Whereas visualization, we realized that a lot of needs to be done in this course. So I just thought, okay, I'll just do a parallel on this. And it's very difficult to actually evaluate people on the visualization. But now it's a very new topic. It's an emerging and evolving topic. And what I realized that many things are just happening in last 10 years. So in a way, we are also learning many things about this visualization. So being from a more math stat background myself, I am more into the models and equations and writing programs and all stuff like that. And as best, I used to do just some pie chart, bar chart, and that's it. But in last 10 years, what we have realized that lot of thing has happened in terms of at a concept level. And I'll try to give you more, I will try to keep this course at a more concept level rather than, just, okay, you do this, do this, do this, and that a beautiful graph will come. So for that, you really don't have to do much. Nowadays, there is a nice things called Tableau has come. It's like almost like Excel. You just put click, 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 and choose certain things. It will do something. But I think once you get the graph, then the things needs to be the really thing like what are you trying to. So when you are using a graph, the main objective of the graph is to convey a message, right? Whether the message is getting conveyed properly or not, that is extremely important. So we will focus on the building the correct message. So that is what we will do here. So today's lecture, I will not introduce R. So from the next lecture next week, I'll introduce R and hands-on. So today I'll just keep the entire thing at a visualization level. Okay, the concept level. So the book that I'm going to use for this course, previously I was using most of my material from this book called Visual Display of Quantitative Information, Edward Tufte. Tufte's book is a bit of a hold now, and it gives sort of a ad hoc way of doing coming up with nice graphs. But in 2005, Leland Wilkinson came up with um, a very nice concept called grammar of graphics. So that means like if you want to tell what is the purpose of a language? Purpose of a language is to communicate between the two people or two group of peoples. Now, you want to communicate when and what is the purpose of a graphics? Graphics is just a medium where you may have learned something and you want to communicate through a graphics. You can communicate through language also. You can communicate through table also. But graphics is something need to, you want to, it's just a medium through which you want to convey certain informations. Now, so naturally it has certain level of grammar. So this is the person who actually in 2005, so in that way it's very, you can see that, and it's still evolving and formalizing, but to extent at least in the R, the ggplot2 is being sort of based on this grammar of graphics. So we will use these two book, left, right, and center, and R ggplot2 is the thing that we will use for this course. I have spoken to a couple of my colleagues, and Tableau is sort of an industry requirement nowadays. But the problem with the Tableau, most of my faculty colleague told me, the at least two of them I spoken to, the both of them told me that, you click something, it will create something, and you don't know what to do with it. That sometimes happens with the Tableau. It creates a beautiful graphics, but you don't know what it really means. But if you use ggplot2, what will happen is you have 100% control on exactly what you want to convey. So it is better you go for the ggplot2, and once you have a much more control on the grammar of graphics, then you can use those concepts on Tableau, and that will give you a much more control on the Tableau itself. So maybe we will do Tableau, next semester or something like that. But this semester, let's focus on ggplot2 with R and grammar of graphics. So this is the triangle that we are trying to cover. Another additional book I will probably touch base upon, called something, it's called Degler. Exactly the name of the, I'll write to you the exact, the author of the name. It's called Introduction to Statistics with R. And that book I will use just to convey certain concepts from the statistics and R connection. So basically, you can think of, it's a square. One side is we have to learn grammar of graphics. Another corner, we have to learn a little bit of basics of R. Third corner, we have to learn a little bit of statistics. And fourth corner, we have to learn uh, I think, yeah, this is the triangle we can think of, the R, statistics, and the grammar of graphics. These three triangle we need to complete effectively. Florence Nightingale, we all know her, that she is the one who actually brought the concept of nursing and, the entire nursing profession. But there is a, I think, chat. Yeah, so Virup is saying Peter Clare Delgard. Yeah, yes, I think that's so too. Yeah. So Florence Nightingale is the person who actually, is the person who built the profession of nursing, and the entire nursing profession actually as a formal profession, kind of led by her. But many of you don't understand and know that she was also a self-taught statistician. In a sense, she's the one who first used graphics in policy making and influencing the policy of English Parliament. So this is the graph she used to influence the policy in English Parliament. So let me explain you what the graph is. Actually, graph is not very clarified here. This is the graph, I reproduced graph. That was the original picture of the graph. So it was, I think, let me, so the blue there, you will see this is a very complicated form of a little bit complicated, not very, little bit complicated form of what was happening in a war between April 1855 and March 1856. And the rate is, and this is a pie chart effectively, but it is more than pie chart actually. And what happened is you can see that in this pie, there are three kind of colors are being used: black, red, and blue. The black is the blue is the one which measured from the center to represent the area from of the deaths from the uh, disease. So blue is the so if you take the center and you take the disease, take this length. This is the number of people who died in month of June of 1855 because of the disease. So there were disease, these number of soldiers were dying in the hospital effectively. These are the people who were, the rate is the one who were dying after the wound, and these are the people who died in the battlefield. So lot more people were actually dying, and throughout the war, you can see this is the month, okay? Any particular month you take, and if you this length is tells you how many people died in the blue case, how many people died in hospital, and the red is the how many people died because of the wound, and black tells you how many people died in the battlefield. And it clearly tells you that the people were dying lot more, the soldiers were dying lot more in the hospital because of the disease rather than in the actual battlefield. So something had to do with the uh, hospital. And this chart, when it was presented, it was abundantly clear to the MPs of English Parliament. And immediately a big committee was set up. And this huge, big expert committee visited the battlefield hospitals. And then they realized that hygiene and sanitation is something that needs to be taken care of at most immediate effect. And as that is where the you can see that one single graph, the effect of one single graph in the policy making. So this is one I will say data science at its dawn. Okay, that is what a data science good visualization should do. Charles Joseph Minards was a cartosian. Basically, uh, he did this beautiful map on Napoleon's campaign to Russia, and I'll try to explain you what it did. So, so when the number of people is about 400,000 uh, soldiers took part in the Napoleon's campaign to Russia. And then these, as they started marching towards Moscow, you can see the number is reducing because every time they're facing some kind of battle, the number reduced. And then it, you can see when it reached to Moscow, it is about 100,000 actually. And then from the 100,000, it started returning to Paris. That time there was no fight or battle, but out of this 100,000, it simply came back finally 10,000. 90,000 died just because of severe winter. They were marching through the cold winter, and in the winter, 90,000 uh, soldier died. So you can see that the entire history of the Napoleon's march and the mistakes and all these things in this graph. And here you can see there is a graph going up and down. This is nothing but the temperature reported in those days. Okay. And during the time of retreat. So during the time of retreat, it was near 0 degree, and then it started going down -8 degree, then -21 degree, and when it was reaching to Paris, near Paris, it was -26 degree. Um, so you can see, because, and they were marching through these cold winter, and so people say that if they would not have returned during the winter and they would have stayed in the Moscow, these 90,000 soldiers, additional that 100,000 soldiers were still good, capable enough to, control the Napoleon's empire. But the small mistake to march through the winter actually eliminate the entire, you know, uh, entire um, military base, and that resulted the fall of Napoleon's. Okay. Um, when you will see that data science is more than just building a model and prediction. And when I'm saying that, yes, probably nowadays some of you have seen some examples where people are trying to build models with cat and dog, or you have some bunch of plant, and which plant is disease and which plant is not disease. Some of the applications are where you have image data, where people are trying to identify in which part of the X-ray image is telling us okay, disease or not disease. um, so but those are the things that already it's in the popular media. But what is important is uh, also you have to explain the models. Okay. So if you just say, oh, I don't know what my model does, but it does beautifully, uh, it is very difficult to uh, if it difficult to convince people what it is actually doing. uh, Remember that one thing in your mind. There is a saying, legendary statisticians George Box, he said one thing, and it is always with me. It's called, he said, uh, all models are wrong. All models are wrong. Some are useful. What it what he meant by that? All models are wrong and some are useful. Um, some are useful. The models, basically, what he tried to say that in real life is much more dynamic. Real life is much more dynamic, and we will never be able to capture all the variables that are playing underneath. But we can, so naturally, we will never know. Actually, we will never be able to, mimic exact the nature in our computer simulations. But what we can do is we can come up with a slightly simpler model, and we can say that, okay, this model can reasonably explain what is going on underneath. And that explanation is extremely important. And visualization is an extremely important tool in that explanation. And if you want to just giving, okay, here is my model and here is my prediction accuracy will not be enough. Okay, this is just one slide. But how you present that, yes, the model that you have built based on the data at your hand, and how you convince that yes, the model that is telling you also somewhat commensurate with the data. So that is also an integral part, and visualization play a very integral part in convincing people that you know probably the model is the right model and not, and there is a logical build up to that. And so what is the, and why we need visualization? Uh, it's translate the abstract information into a visual representation that can be easily, efficiently, accurately, and meaningfully decoded. So that means there is a decoding part of it. Okay. So imagine you have a data. Okay. Imagine a data means, when I'm saying data, imagine the data is in Excel format. Okay? Some values, some strings, something is there. You have played with that data and you learned something. Okay. Now, whatever in your head you want to convey to the person, in somebody, a group of people, or your boss, or your supervisor, or somebody, or your teacher, professor, whoever. So, that means a channel of communication needs to go. That now what you are doing, trying to do, you are building a bunch of, you suppose you decide, okay, I will make a pie chart, I will make a bar chart, I will make a line chart. You decide to do, then there will be, so that means you have certain insight in your mind, and you are encoding that insight in that bar chart, line chart, and pie chart. And then from that bar chart, pie chart, line chart, the person who is seeing that, they are decoding something from it. Okay. And that, so there is a encoding and there is a decoding, and that person is decoding, just seeing the graph, that person is trying to decode the part, and there is some data storytelling part comes in. So you have to tell the story with the data that, probably you have heard of it, but that part we will come later of this lecture series. In the most of the part, we will focus on how to encode the insight that you have learned from the data, or you are learning from the data, into a graphical object. This encoding part, we will do it in such a way so that the decoding will become automatic. Anybody who sees that should be able to understand, yes, exactly what you are trying to say. So the decoding will become much more less effort. With a very much less effort, decoding, the people should be able to understand. The graph should tell the story itself. Almost it should tell the story to itself. Now, primary cause of this, here I'm telling you an example, and there is a, if I just primary cause of death, I have taken the data, this is from actual real life data. If you take this data and it says the cause of death by heart disease, cancer, stroke, and all these kind of uh, causes, and there is a death per year is given. I think it is a US based data. And if you just look at it, the table, that is one way of presenting, but there could be many other ways of the presenting the data. So primary clearly indicates that how values relate to one another, right? I mean, represents, it represents the quantities accurately, because you don't have to, the exact number to the last digit. Makes it easy to compare the quantities, makes it easy to find order values, such as, and makes obvious how people should use the information, what they should use to accomplish. But the same data, you can present it in this way as well. Now, if you present this data, either you can present it in a table format in this way, or you can present it in this format. in a pie chart. Now, clearly, if you, there will be some people who will like the table format, and there will be some people who will like the pie chart. And when we do, what are we doing here? Effectively, these two are containing the same information, and we are trying to present the same information in two ways. This is effectively my raw data, right? And just seeing the raw data, it is being, the people like us who are in the data science domain, we are being so much used to with the word, numbers, seeing numbers. For us, it will be good. But there are a lot of people, actually more people in the outside the domain, who are not so much comfortable with these numbers. In a sense, sometimes these numbers does not make sense to them. So what we are doing, we are taking these numbers and presenting in a geometric form. This is one geometric form, right? And the same thing you can, I think, you can do it in this way also. Now, what is the difference between presenting you have the data, which is in the table form. Either the same data, you can present in pie chart, and the same data you can present in the bar chart format also. Now imagine, so basically, when I'm presenting it in a bar chart kind of format, effectively it's a XY coordinate system that I'm trying to use. Whereas when I'm trying to put it into a pie chart kind of format, I am using a polar coordinate system to represent the same data set. But polar coordinate system gives a certain kind of information, so amplify certain kind of information, whereas XY coordinate system amplify another kind of information. Okay, so this is what we are trying to learn in the next 5-6 lectures, that I have a data and how I can represent in a geometric shape so that the information that I am trying to convey can be presented the most efficient way. So it's going to be all about geometry. When it comes to graphical presentation of data, effectively, I have a data. Most of the time, you will have a data in some database. Okay, it could be in a Excel format, it could be in a CSV format, it could be in a SQL database, MySQL database or something, I don't know, or NoSQL database. Some database has some data, means some numeric values, strings, anything. And then you are taking that data and you are trying to present it in a using some geometric shape. And looking at the geometric shape, can I say something? That is what the visualization is all about. So when I'm saying the visualization is what is the geometric shape of this data? That is what we are trying to reveal in this class. Here is a representation of our brain from a side thing. So this is, if you imagine you are seeing a person from the side. So this is the front side and this is the back of the head. And if you see this part, this is the visual cortex, what helps us to see things. And this is a large area of the brain, which is known as prefrontal cortex. Now, visual cortex helps us to see things and comprehend things, and this part is extremely fast. Whereas prefrontal cortex is helps us to do all kind of logical deduction, and it's a very large area actually. It helps us to do all kind of logical deduction, uh, you know, go through very tedious logical step by step algorithm solving process. It helps us basically in that way. So if you're not in your presentation, suppose you've done a data analysis work, you are going to show the work, and suppose in your PPT presentation there is no graph, okay, and only some writings, maybe some tables, and you are trying to say something. What does it mean? It means basically you are not allowing your audience to use their visual cortex. You are asking your audience to use their prefrontal cortex, which is very slow in nature. Okay. So if you trying to give a message, if you use, instead of giving it with lot of words and jargons and theorems and results, if you can take that theorem and give a visual presentation of that theorem, the visual cortex immediately comes into the picture and it helps us to understand what is happening. Okay, so that's why many of us loves seeing some graphical presentation of a theorem, what exactly the theorem is doing, because this part is extremely fast and it helps us, and we are very visual in our nature. So that is, so if you are using your presentation with, or if you're trying to communicate something, if you're using a graph as well as some logical thing, then there will be a balance between the visual cortex and the prefrontal cortex. But if you are not using graphs, then you are asking your audience to use only their prefrontal cortex, and you are not taking the advantage that everybody has a visual cortex, and you are not taking the advantage of that, that part of the CPU that is, you are not using it, if I say it in that perspective. So data visualization is effective because it shifts the balance between the perception and cognition to take the full advantage of the brain's ability. So the visual perception handled by the visual cortex located in the rear of the brain is extremely fast and efficient. We can see through immediately with a very little effort. Thinking, that is cognition, which handles primarily by the cerebral cortex, the prefrontal, which is in the front of the brain, is much slower and less efficient. So traditional modeling of data analysis requires conscious thinking for almost all of the work. Visualization shifts the balance towards greater use of visual perception, taking advantage of our powerful eyes whenever it is possible. All right. So position data along common scales and bars for more effective than the circles and square and communicating size. Color is more discernible than shape and scatter plots. So use of color. So this comes into the aesthetic part. So should you use a red color or gray color? Should you use a blue color or purple color? So what kind of color? So this aesthetic part is something uh, people, you have to probably play a lot of play around and come up with, and there is no science behind it. But what we will try to do, and that we will see that we will try to use this color and all these things, but certain things you should avoid, that you have to be careful about when you're presenting uh, data into a visualization form. In a sense, suppose you're trying to draw a pie chart, okay, or pie graph. Basically, a pie graph shows the proportion. Now, you should avoid the 3D pie chart. Why? Because when you're trying to do a pie chart, effectively your information is a 2 dimension. And some of the graph tools, if you ask them to draw a 3D pie chart, they will take the 2D dimension and they will just draw a pie chart, 3D pie chart. So basically you're trying to plot a 2 dimension information into a 3 dimension. And means that you're distorting the information, because it is, if your data is in 2 dimension, you better present it in 2 dimension. If you nicely draw a 3 dimension pie chart, yes, it will look good, it will look cool, okay, yeah, you did a 3 dimension pie chart. But actually it may distort the actual information that you are trying to convey. um, So what makes visualization important is highlighting the key aspect of data. What are the most important variables? What is their relative importance? What are the changes and trends? So these are the typical questions. These are the 3 typical questions most of the visualizations kind of evolve around. So what are the most important variables? What is their relative importance, and what are the changes and trends? Okay, is there a seasonality? Is there a long run trend? And this kind of questions that always most of these variables actually evolve around. This is an interesting um, graph. So this is actually artificial data, and it's known as Anscombe Quartlet or Anscombe 4. These artificial data has an interesting thing. These data have, all these 4 data has exactly same correlation, 0.87. You can do a Google search, Anscombe Quartlet, and you will find even in Wikipedia the data is also given. Actually, it has, I think, 11 points in each of the data set data set. Each of the 4 data set, I think 11 points are there, 11 samples. You just plug it into a formula of correlation, and it will give you correlation exactly 0.87. What it means that 4 different absolutely different looking data can have the exact same correlations. Means um, if I just give you the data and correlation, you have no way to figure out whether they are coming from the same. If I just tell you they are coming from the same family, probably by default we will assume that yes, they're coming from the same family of distributions. But if we plot it into a visualization, then we realize, oh, there is something different is going on. Okay. So here is the data set. All the 4 data has exact mean of X is 9, mean of Y is 7.5, variance of X is 11, variance of Y is 4.125, correlation is 0.816. They have exact same linear regression, Y equal to 3 plus 5X. So this is an interesting thing. If I just give you 4 data set and you come up with these values, these properties, you will think that, okay, they're coming from exactly same distributions. But just when I plot them, it tells me a very, very different information. And what is that information? That information is the geometric shape of these data. So this example of Anscombe, so when you have, you are learning, expectation, how to calculate expected value of X, how to calculate variance of X. Now you will learn how to calculate correlations of X. So I think Professor Ramurthy is teaching you now bivariate distributions, right? So, or you're learning how to calculate all these values. These are the main properties of the data set, right? Now, if I give you the four different data set and said, okay, all these four different data set has exactly same mean, same mean of X, same mean of Y, same variance of X, same variance of Y, and same correlation of X and Y, then you would tend to think that, okay, these four data set probably coming should have the same behavior. Well, they can have a very different geometric behavior. Geometric shape could be absolutely different in spite of their statistical properties are exactly same. And that is what we try to capture in the visualization, in a graph, in a graphics. So graphics reveal the data, the geometric shape of a particular data. Huh. So unnecessary junk. So data visualization should be visually appealing, but not at the expense of loading a chart with unnecessary junk. So sometimes what happens, people get overexcited and they do present, with lot of junks. And do we need those junks? So this is one such example. So in the Diamond Association, in this is old data actually, um, present this graph, and that how price of diamond varied over in about um, 5 years between 1978, 79, 80, 81, and 82. And this red thing that you see is actually the graph, and rest of the thing is complete junk. So, and this is actually, but if you show that immediately, you will have hard time actually to figure out where is the graph, what is the graph. Okay, the way it is being completely presented is completely useless graph. So when you have to be very careful about what you are trying to put into a graph. So the principle of graphical excellence is give the viewer the greatest number of ideas in shortest time with least ink in the smallest space. And I'll come to these things as gradually. So here is there is a something called lie, damn lies, and statistics. Okay, Fox News is one of the very controversial news channel in United States, and it was a bit old. I think in 2011, 2012, around that time, and they are mostly support the Republican Party. Sometimes people call it Republican Party's mouthpiece. There is certain problem with this chart. Can you look into it and tell me what is the problem with uh, this chart?
So the scale hasn't been properly chosen.
Scale hasn't been properly chosen. Okay.
Yes, sir, because like the change in the unemployment rate has been significant over these points, but the scale
Which point?
has sir, the unemployment rate has been significantly changing over these points,
Hmm.
but the scale is so chosen that the changes are not highlighted properly. That's one
So
point.
you're
And
saying 8 to 10 is not right presentation. From 8.5 to 9.5 is probably a much better correct presentation, right? That is what you're.
yes, Yes, sir.
But, fine,
So
but
there's
there is a bigger problem in there.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's in October and November the levels are very different. There's a difference of 0.4%, but they
Ah,
are on exact same level. Line is
exactly.
flat.
So this is one of the problem. And look into the March 8.8 and 8.6 is presented above 8.8. Okay. So this is a damn lie. So you can say a damn lie with a nice graph. So that's why I say this lies, damn lies in statistics. Okay. So there is another example. The scale problem that you were mentioning. Who was the first time you were talking? Scale thing you were mentioning. Who was
Sir, it
telling
was
it?
me.
Huh?
Sir, it was me.
No,
It
no.
was me, sir.
What's your name?
Avirup, sir.
Okay, Aviru, fine. So Aviru, what you were telling about it, this is the example that that scale could be very it could deceive the thing a lot. Like here in this case, interest rate, okay, over it's American interest rate I have taken 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. The interest rate is going up. The way it is being presented, it is looks like it is increasing very fast. Same data I'm presenting from 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It looks like flat. Now what is happening here, scale is taken from 0 to 3.5. And here it is taken from 3.14 to 3.154. So because it is taken, it is at a very minuscule level. So both the presentation is right, but clearly it is subjective presentation. What is the right thing? What is the, how you amplify? So there you can, if you want to amplify even a small change, then you have to take the scale at a very uh, granular level. But if you want to look at the values at a macro, so I would not say it's a lie, damn lie statistic. It's just that whether you want to amplify which side of, I mean, amplify and how you want to present the data. So when you are presenting a data, the geometric shape, scale is going to matter a lot. So here, so in previous plot, it was a damn lie, right? I mean, you cannot hide it. 8.6 is being presented above 8.8. I mean, period. It was a damn lie. But here, there is no problem in terms of presenting the data. If the scale is different, one data scientist can choose this scale, another data scientist choose this scale, and okay, fine. And then one data scientist will argue there is it's a flat, not nothing happening much in the interest rate. Another data scientist will argue, well, that it is going very rapidly, going up very rapidly. So it's about the perspective. But the point I'm trying to make is scale is going to play a very important role, and we will see that scale is a very important feature or of the grammar of graphics. Okay, we will introduce the grammar of graphics next time. Here is another example. Can you look into it and tell me what is the problem? There is some statistics is presented below. And there was some serious problem.
Sir, the sum is not added up to 61%.
No. 61%, the Republic TV is claiming 61%. Times Now, they're saying Times Now at 25%, CNN News 18 is 6%. Actually, if you add them up, they cross 100%.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
The
Yes, sir.
numbers are not adding up to 100%. So it is more than 100%. So that is another problem. So these are the things always keeps, catches my eyes. Okay. So most of the time we will see that, you will present the line chart, bar chart and scatter plot and pie chart. So these are the things we will mostly focus on. Nowadays, you will see a lot of new chart system has come up to present the multivariate data called something called radar chart and violin chart and stuff like that. Those chart we will do probably at the end, we will explore, but most of the time I have seen that it's very there are certain criticisms also, so we have to be carefully take into those charts carefully, that some a chart may look like very beautiful, and you may feel little tempted to use a chart which looks very beautiful, but my suggestion is be careful, and it is better. I personally prefer to stick to these charts, line, bar, scatter, and pie charts, because one reason people are much more familiar with those kind of charts, and second reason is so the I don't see chart graph as a impress people. I see it's just a tool through which I want to convey a message. I want to tell a story. Okay, I want to say something about science. So I'm not trying to impress them with the chart. If I have to really impress, I will try to impress with my science or with my ability to analyze the data correctly. That is what is much more valuable than a beautiful chart. So, and a chart is just a tool for us to convey a message. Okay. Sometimes you have to use your common sense. And this is not about graph, this is about data science as a whole. So this A is the New York stock price movement in New York Stock Exchange. This is London stock price movement, and this is solar radiation. Okay, the solid black dash line is the solar radiation, and the lower dash line is the London stock price exchange movement, and the above one is the New York stock price exchange movement. And this is like from history, 1929. Okay, and this is what our common sense tells us, that this is a bullshit. This does not make any sense. There is something called spurious correlation. You may find these kind of spurious correlation oftentimes between the variables. Okay, and these you have to be very careful. Sometimes just you have to use your common sense. Just because it's showing a nice behavior does not mean it make any sense. You have to be, and it is true with visualization, it is true with even the basic data analysis also. So what is correlation coefficient? It's just a formula. If you plug a value of X, if you plug a value of Y, it will give you a value. It might give you, even in this case, I can guarantee you, if you plug these values and compute the correlation coefficient, it will give you a correlation of 0.8 or 0.9. I can guarantee that just looking at the chart. But does it make any sense? It's just an equation. You plug the values, you get something. So if you garbage in, the garbage out. So you have to be very careful about what you plug into a formula. So that is where you have to use your common sense. Does it make sense? Is it supported by the domain? I'm trying to calculate the correlation between variable X and Y. And that is where you may talk to domain expert, that yes, do you think, just ask this question, do you think these two variables are going to be correlated? Ask them that, do you think these two variables are going to be associated? and can influence each other? Do you think they have an underlying physical process or some chemical process or some engineering process which resulted into these two variables? If they say it does not make sense there because whatever the underlying processes are not same and they're coming from a very different two different sources, most likely it is going to be a spurious correlation. And my recommendation, avoid this kind of this kind of, even if it gives you nice high correlation and stuff like that, avoid that kind of thing. It is most likely is going to be a spurious correlation. Here is another data story. It's called Data on Maps, London Cholera in 1854. So what happened is there was a cholera breakout happens, and at that time in 1850s, people were not sure what causes cholera. They were not, they didn't know that cholera was a waterborne disease. Okay, so there was different kind of theory was going around, like it is a airborne disease, it is a contagious and stuff like that. At the beginning of the, you remember this epidemic, some theory was coming up, okay, it is airborne, like, the COVID-19 is a airborne disease, is it airborne, how much, and all these things, where people were not sure actually. And what how they discover actually that cholera is a airborne disease, waterborne disease. So what they did, a particular block of London was yielding lot of cholera patient. So they plot these cases in different houses and on the map. Now you can see here is a small cross. So here is a water hydrant which distribute water in the surrounding houses. Okay. Now, what happened is you can see these people in this, where a lot of cases are coming up in this one. But there was almost no cases here, just next to this road, Broadwick Street. And there was not a single case here. But a lot of people were living in this one also. So what happened is here was a brewery, a beer brewery in this area, and they were getting their water from the brewery. And whereas these people were getting from the municipality water sources. And that was the first turning point. So the recommendation was remove this, some contamination is happening in these water sources. So they need to stop this water source. So they sealed this water source and gradually the cholera vanished from this area. There was still some argument was going on for a while, for next 5 to 10 years, whether still it was waterborne disease or not. But eventually everybody came to the conclusion, yes, cholera indeed a waterborne disease. And this was the first paper and this was the first map which tells people that, okay, there is a strong feasibility that cholera is indeed a waterborne disease. So this goes into the history of data science or statistics, or something called spatial statistics. So sometimes we have to see the data on the map, okay, on the real geographical map. So geographical correlation, this is something called spatial correlation or geographical correlation. That is extremely important. So if you see that a particular species thrives in a particular geographical locations, so that, and there will be some kind of ecosystem builds up, and that ecosystem is something called, because of that ecosystem, a particular species is thriving or something is happening. So that is called geographical correlation. Here is a visual representation of how seahorse moves from one place to another place. This is a starfish. This is a gecko. How a gecko moves in over the time. So this is a visual representation from Tufts' book that I have taken. Here is another presentation of how moon descending staircase, basically a person, how we descend from a stair through a staircase. So you can see there is a person who with a point here, and the certain points here is being joined, and that person has gone down, and that created that the person descended from the staircase, and that created the entire painting. So that is how it's being done. So this creates so that you can do time series analysis. So that means basically, and the end of my goal is, can we do animation with data to realize, and time series plot are the best thing to do animation with. And we will, my goal is by the end of maybe 6 or 7 lectures, we would like to learn a little bit of how to do animation with the data. That is my end goal. But this is just, when there was no art, there was no computer, there nothing, we were still thinking like, how can I do animate? How can I explain that how seahorse move vertically in the water? Okay, so that is how they, you can see there is a fin. This fin is actually help them to move vertically in the water. So there I have seen, this is the life cycle of Japanese beetle, cigarette consumption and lung cancer, 2 variable, 2 emotions. So this is in one axis, they have created a rage, another axis, they created a fear, and it's a nice presentation of how emotion can be presented. And this is, I feel, one of my favorite graph actually. Dose response trial. This is a very old graph from 1939, published paper. So this is like varying size of white pine seedlings after growing for 1 season in sand containing different amount of calcium in parts per million in nutrient sand cultures. So here the calcium level is 0. Here it is 50, 100, 300, 600, and 900. And of how these seedlings actually grow and how calcium is going to affect. So probably you can see, just looking at the graph, you can say that, okay, probably 100 and 300 is the most optimal. And then too low is not probably a very helpful. Maybe 50 is also okay, 50 to 300. But if you don't have a calcium at all, that is not good. If you have too much of calcium, that is also not good, right? So optimal size is somewhere between 50 and 300. So that is what it's talking about. So what is graphical excellence? The graphical excellence is, you have some ideas and you have some times, and then you want to present that ideas in the space. That is what all about is graphical excellence. So that's all I have. So my request is, get your R installed and R Studio installed. So next week we will start doing some of R and R Studio using R. First, you must install R if you don't have R and R Studio, and then R Studio. If you install R Studio first and then R, then you may have some problem. Make sure first you installing R and then you install R Studio. Don't install RStudio first. RStudio is just a development environment. Okay, it doesn't. The main core engine is R. So unless you have a R engine, RStudio will not run. So you have to have a R first. You have to have basic R first, and then you install. So if you just go to Google and in the say that R installation, that it will give you the basic, the most latest version. Take the stable version, don't take the latest. Always there will be some development version. So take the latest stable version and download and install it. Generally it does not take much time depending on your internet speed. And then once you install R, then you install the R Studio. So that is the two things that make sure you have it ready on it. And rest of the thing I will show you how to do it. Install ggplot2. I will give I will email you guys instructions about these things. Okay. Anybody have any questions? So next week we will start hands-on with R and R Studio and etc. Okay. So I'll stop here. I'll stop the recording here. Anybody have